Good day everyone, I'm Anthony Jantabada, your reporter for today's topic, which is competency, critical thinking. Another example of scoring rubrics. Start. So first, student must be able to think critically by performing specific cognitive tasks. So we have 5 cognitive tasks which is assigned to me to discuss with you, which is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, and lastly, evaluating. So we have 5 categories which is we will use to level the performance of the students, which is not applicable, not evident, beginner, capable, and competent. So start with cognitive task number 1, which is remembering. So a student recalls content and details. So the two categories which is not applicable and not evident are the performance of the students, that they can't be suitable with the task, or they can't do this or that. So let's proceed to beginner. So in the beginner, the student recalls some content and details but not always, which means some of the student recalls of the content but not always. So example of this is when a student recite to some of question of the teacher. They gave some of the content they remember and the details, but not all, not overall, or not all content. So next is capable, which is the students can recall most of the content details accurately. So an example of this, the student recalls, like I said earlier, the student recite to the question of their teacher. He or she answered most of the questions or the details accurately. So, but there are some content or details that they didn't remember. So next is category, which is competent. In this category, the students recalls all significant content and details accurately. So example of this, the student recite to the question of their teachers or their teacher with all the significant content and details accurately. So they can give the content or details accurately. So let's proceed to another example of situation in remembering, which is identifies classification, principles, methodologies, and theories. So in the category of beginner, the students identify some of classification principles, methodologies, and theories. So the example of this in the beginner, the students they identifies the classification or the principles of the task which is given to them. And next is capable. And capable, the students identifies most classification, principles, methodologies, and theories. So like the example earlier, the example of this is when the students do a task, they recognize or they identifies the classification of some contents or some category, or they identifies the methodologies or the theories of this. So next is incompetent, which is the students identifies significant classification, principles, methodologies, and theories. So in this category, the students identifies all the significant classification, or they recognize all the classification or the principles they read or they see, which makes them a competent students. So let's proceed to another situation of the cognitive task, which is remembering. So the third situation is the students can restate the main ideas, concepts, and principles. So in the category of the beginner, the students can restate main ideas, concepts, and principles with difficulty. So example of this, the students they participate or they participate on recitation, and the teacher asks them to restate the main ideas of the sentence. So they restate the main ideas and concept principles but with difficulty. So they have a hard time remembering all the main ideas, concepts, principles. So next is in the category of the capable, the student restates main ideas, concepts, and principles with minimal assistance. So in this category, the students can restate the main ideas or the the principles with minimal assistance. So example of this, the students, like I said, the example earlier, let's just give some level up to their performance, which is students they said the main ideas of the statements or the concepts of this, but with minimal assistance of their peers or their teachers. So let's proceed to another example, another category, which is the competent. So in competent category, the students restates main ideas, concepts, and principles clearly and accurately. So in this category, the students can let's proceed to the example. So the example of this is the students can give the main ideas, or they can say say the main ideas of a statement, or they can give the main concepts or the main principles of some statements. They can give them clearly and accurately to their teachers. So we're done with the first cognitive task, which is remembering. Let's proceed to another cognitive task, the second cognitive task, which is understanding. So an example of situation in this is the student can explain ideas, concepts, and principles. So in the category of the beginner, the students explain ideas, concepts, and principles with limited accuracy and irrelevant examples. So an example of this, the students participate in class recitation, which the teacher asked or gave a question to explain some of their statements. So the students can explain the ideas of this ideas or the concepts of these statements or the principle of these, but they give only a limited accuracy, and they only give irrelevant examples. So in the word irrelevant, they don't have a basis with this example of we can say if it's true or false. So let's proceed to the next category, which is capable. So in capable category, the students can explain ideas, concepts, and principles with some accuracy and relevant examples. So an example of this, like earlier, the students participates in the questions, which the teacher asked them to explain the concept. So the students can explain, they explain the ideas or the concepts of these statements, the principles of these. They give examples with accuracy, and they explain it accurately, uh, not overall, but um, they give some explanation accurately. So, and they can give relevant examples. So they have a basis examples, or they can support their examples to this or to their explanations. So the next category, which is is the competent. The students can explain ideas, concepts, and principles with accuracy and relevant examples. So the example of this, like earlier, the teacher asked them with to explain the statement. So the students, they explain the what they understand to these statements. They give examples, or they explain the ideas or the concept and principles of these statements with accuracy and relevant examples. So they can support the examples, or they can explain it well, the statements. So let's proceed to another situation, which is the students contextualize ideas, concepts, and principles. So in the category of beginner, the students can contextualize ideas, concepts, and principles with difficulty. So an example of this, the students, they they understand some of the content of statements, so they contextualize some of these. Some of these ideas are concept principles, but they are having a hard time of understanding this, or contextualizing the ideas, or like in the statement, or the students, they can explain some of the contents, but with difficulty. So, and the next category, which is capable, the students can contextualize ideas, concepts, and principles with minimal difficulty. So, the example of this, the students explain, or they contextualize some of the ideas, or they contextualize the concepts, principles, but with minimal difficulty. So let's proceed to the next category, which is competent. So in this category, the students contextualize ideas, concepts, and principles with ease. So example of this, the students can contextualize the ideas, or they understand the ideas or the concepts with they don't get a hard time with this, so they can just contextualize the ideas, concepts. Unlike the others, they get difficulty explaining this, or they get difficulties with understanding of these ideas. So let's proceed to another situation, which is the student demonstrate awareness. So in the category of the beginner, the students can demonstrate minimal awareness of the depth of breadth of one's knowledge. So example of this, the students can they give some of the movements, or some of the explanation, or they present what they understand, or like in the statement, they can demonstrate the awareness of the depth or breadth of the one's knowledge. So what they understand, and explain it to the other. So in the capable category, the students can demonstrate some awareness of the deep and breadth of one's knowledge. So, the example of this category and capable, uh, let's say the students represent or explain of one's knowledge. So, let's say um, some psychology or the teacher um, said something or they gives a statement or and the student explain it to their peers, so they can demonstrate, they can understand some of the awareness which the teacher gave to them and explain it to their peer. So let's proceed to another in competent category. The students can demonstrates a clear awareness of the depth and breadth of one's knowledge. So, like the example earlier, the teacher gave a statement and the students explain it to the other students. So, they can demonstrate or they can represent the statement clearly or accurately to the others. So let's proceed to another situation, which is the students anticipates consequences. So in the beginner category, the students can anticipates consequences of principles and concepts with little accuracy. So the example of this, the students can recognize or they can identify or what we call this, they can predict or the consequences of the principles or the concepts they read or they understand with little accuracy. So they can't be sure of this or that, of what consequences it may come. So, and capable category, the students can anticipate consequences of principles and concepts with some accuracy. So, the example of this, the students can, like earlier, they can predict or they know some of the consequences. So, they can predict the consequences of principles or concept they read with some accuracy. So what to call this, they can give accuracy but not overall. So some there are still there are possibilities that the one they anticipates the consequence will not happen, or they can give they can anticipates the consequences of the principles or concept with some accuracy. So let's proceed to another category, which is competent. So in competent category, the students can anticipate consequences of principles and concept with accuracy. So example of this, the students can predict or they can anticipate or they know of the consequences of what they read, or they know the answer, or they know the instruction or the results of what they read, the consequences of the principles or the concepts with accuracy. So they know what are the results. So let's proceed to the next cognitive task, which is applying. So an example of situation of this is, first is the student applies knowledge. So like the word applying. So in the beginner category of the beginner, the students can apply knowledge with little consistency of or accuracy. So in this category, an example of this, the students they do some of the tasks which is required with some knowledge or required skills. So they apply their knowledge with this, but with little consistency or accuracy. So we're not let's say the students are not sure about the results of what they apply or what they did. So let's proceed to the another category, which is capable. In capable category, the students can apply knowledge with some degree of consistency or accuracy. So in this, like the example earlier, let's just give some level up with this. The students can apply the knowledge they get or in the task given to them by their teachers. So they apply their knowledge with some degree, or they give some of the skills or abilities level to the task given to them. So they, unlike the beginner category, the students in this category can anticipate, they can apply the knowledge with some degree. They can give consistency or accuracy. They are not fully sure, but they can understand, or they can apply the knowledge well. Next category, in competent category, the students applies knowledge with consistency or accuracy. So in this category, the example of this, the students can they applies the knowledge or the skills they know, or what they know in some of the tasks or the tasks given to them by their teachers with some with accuracy and consistency. So they can give the exact knowledge or exact skills to the tasks given to them with consistency. Let's proceed to another situation, which is 6 alternative solutions. So in the category of the beginner, the students 6 alternative solutions for a problem only with assistance. So example of this, the students can only find or apply the alternative solutions, but alternative solutions to a problem, but with only the assistance of their peer or their teachers. So they can't find a solutions for the problem with their own. So in the capable category, the student seeks alternative solutions for a problem with occasional assistance. So example of this, the students seeks alternative solutions with their own, but sometimes they ask their teacher or their peers for alternative solutions for the problem. So with the word occasional, they just ask or they seek alternative solutions sometimes to their teachers or their peers. So let's proceed to another category. In competent category, the students seeks alternative solutions for a problem independently. So with the word independently, so the example of this, the students can find or they seek the alternative solutions with their own. So they can find solutions for a problem alone without the help of the others. So let's proceed to the another situation in applying cognitive tasks, which is the students applies procedures and concepts. And so in the category of the beginner, the students applies procedures and concepts to familiar tasks with limited accuracy but not to unfamiliar tasks. So the example of this, the students can they apply the procedures or the instruction they know or they understand. They applies it to the task. They are familiar, but with little accuracy, so they can't be sure about this one or what they did, or because they just have limited accuracy. But in unfamiliar tasks, they can't apply the procedures or the concepts they know, or they of their knowledge. They can't apply it to unfamiliar tasks. So in the category of the capable, the students applies procedures and concepts to familiar tasks but shows difficulty with unfamiliar tasks. So the example of this, like I said earlier, the students can apply the procedures they know or they understand in the instruction. They can apply it to the familiar tasks. But in unfamiliar tasks, they shows a hard time, or they can fully sure, or they can give accuracy of the procedures they understand. They can applies it accurately to the unfamiliar task. Unlike the beginner, the students is not able to applies the knowledge in unfamiliar tasks, but in capable, they can apply the procedures in unfamiliar tasks but shows difficulty. So let's proceed to the another category, which is competent. So in competent category, the students applies procedures and concepts, both familiar and unfamiliar tasks. So in this category, the students can apply the knowledge they get, or the instruction, or what they call they can apply what they know to the familiar tasks and unfamiliar tasks, both of them. So we're done with the third cognitive task, which is applying. Let's proceed to the fourth cognitive task, which is analyzing. So first situation is the student draws conclusions. So in the beginner category, the students draws conclusions with difficulty. So example of this, the students can they can picturize, or they can imagine the conclusions but with difficulty, or they having a hard time imagining the conclusions of what they read or what they understand. So let's proceed to the next category, which is capable. So in the capable category, the students draws conclusions with some degree of difficulty. So they can imagine the conclusions, or they can picturize, or they can present the conclusions, but they are having some degree of difficulty. So they also get difficulty, but not like in the beginner stage or in the beginner category. So let's proceed to category of the competence. So in the competent category, the students draws well-reasoned conclusions consistently. So in this category, an example of this is the students can picturize or imagine the well-reasoned, or they can support he or she can support his conclusion, and he can um, analyze it consistently. So let's proceed to another situation, which is distinguish information. So in the category of the beginner, the students can distinguish relevant from irrelevant information with difficulty. So in this category, example of this is when the students can they can recognize or they can classify the relevant information to the irrelevant information, but with difficulty. So they can classify the two, but they are having some hard time doing this. So in the next category, which is capable, in capable category, the students can distinguish relevant from irrelevant information with minimal difficulty. So they can, the example of this is when the students can when they read statements, they excuse me, they can distinguish the relevant information and irrelevant information to the statement with minimal difficulty. So they also, I like the beginner category. Incapable category, they also get difficult situation, difficulty with distinguishing the relevant and irrelevant information, but with minimal. So just few level above with the beginner. So let's proceed to the
competent category,
which is the student distinguish relevant from irrelevant information easily. So in this category, an example of this is the students can when they read a statement, they can distinguish the relevant information from irrelevant information easily. So they are not having a hard time analyzing the statement, or they are not having a hard time classifying the relevant to irrelevant information. So let's proceed to another situation, which is breaks down theories, formulas, or arguments. So in the beginner category, the students can breaks down theories, formulas, or arguments into their elements with difficulty. So example of this is the students can analyze each theories or formulas or arguments, but with they can they can classify the theories or formulas into the specific elements, or principle concepts. The students can give the theories, formulas in this concept or this principle, but they are having a hard time, or they are having a difficulty. So in the next category, which is capable category, the students can breaks down theories, formulas, or arguments into their elements with minimal difficulty. So example of this category is the students can breaks down each of the theories, formulas, or arguments in each element, so in each specific elements, but they are having a minimal difficulty. So example is that the students are having a task which they have to classify each of the theories, formulas, arguments into their specific elements. So example of this task is matching type. So the statements which is said something like this is related to in the column A, not just like that. So they can breaks down, so they can classify theories or formulas, but into their into their elements, but minimal difficulties, or they are having difficulty also, like the beginner category. So, and the next category, which is competent category, the students can break down theories, formulas, or arguments into their elements with accuracy. So in this category, the students can breaks down each of the theories, formulas, or accuracy with accuracy. So or arguments with accuracy. So example of this is the students can they can understand, or they can analyze each of the theories or the pure formulas, arguments with accuracy. So they can classify each of these into their elements. So next situation is demonstrate awareness, but in analyzing. So let's proceed to the next situation, which is demonstrate awareness. So in the beginner category, the students demonstrates minimal awareness of one's or another's biases, assumption, or values. So example of this is when the students can they represent some of the like you said, researcher, or in debate also, the other said some of the biases, or some of their statements. The students analyze and demonstrates the awareness that the other saying, or their statements. So they can analyze it, but with minimal awareness. So next category is in capable category. So in capable category, the students can demonstrate some degree of awareness of one's or another's bias, assumption, or values. So example of this is the students can demonstrate or represent, explain, or analyze some degree of awareness or the knowledge the other said, and they can analyze, or they can demonstrate the biases or the assumption or value stating in other on another side. So example, it is just like the first in the earlier example, which is the debate, they saying statements. So they can demonstrate or represent the other point or other ideas or values, assumption, saying in the other side. So next category is competence. So in competent category, the students can demonstrate full awareness of one's or another's bias, assumption, or values. So in this category, example of this is in just like the I said earlier in debate example. So the students can demonstrate full awareness, or they can analyze the statement said in the other side. They can represent, or they can say this, they can build information or awareness to the other side assumption, or they can so that they can demonstrate it, or they can analyze it well with full awareness. So we're done with the fourth cognitive task, which is analyzing. So let's proceed to the fifth and my last discussion with you is which is evaluating. So in the first situation in evaluating, the students assesses the reliability and comprehensiveness. So in category of the beginner, the students can assesses the reliability and comprehensiveness of sources with limited accuracy. Excuse me. So example of this is the student can evaluate the reliability of or comprehensiveness of some sources with limited accuracy. So example of this is when making a research, the students can see or he can evaluate the related information he searched to if it's reliable to add to here or his research. So but they are having they are just can use limited accuracy, so they can't be sure enough if it's reliable or comprehensive enough. So next category is capable category. So in capable category, the students can assesses the reliability and comprehensiveness of sources with some accuracy. So just like that a earlier example, so when making students when making research, they can recognize or they can evaluate if it's reliable enough or if it's comprehensive enough to be added to their related literature or related review related literature, sorry. So just like it, they can evaluate if it's reliable enough and comprehensive enough to be added to their review related literature. So next category is competent category. So in competent category, the students can assesses the reliability and comprehensiveness of sources with accuracy. So in this category, the students can with their performance, they can evaluate the information of the sources with accuracy. So they can be sure enough to the information they get or they search that it's already reliable and comprehensive. They can evaluate it already. So that's the competent category. So let's proceed to the next situation, which is the students can determine effectiveness and appropriateness. So in this situation and the beginner category, the students can determine with minimal degree of effectiveness and appropriateness a specific process, method, or theory in solving a problem. So the students can he can or she can identify or determine the effectiveness of some process or method or theory or solving a problem. He can identify or determines it with minimal degree. He can't be sure enough to the that he or she determines it right, the statements or what he read, or he can't evaluate it enough if it's effective or appropriate to a specific process or specific by solving a problem. So next category is capable category. So in capable category, the students can demonstrate in capable category, the students can determine with some degree of effectiveness and appropriateness a specific process, method, or theory in solving a problem. So the example of this is when the students can determine or identify the statement or the formula or principle if it's effective enough or appropriate enough to solving a problem. So it's like example, the students formula, the student determine the formula with some degree of evaluating that he determined that it's effective and appropriate to solving the problem. So next category is next category is competent category. So, in competent category, the students can determine accurately the effectiveness and appropriateness of a specific process, method, or theory in solving a problem. So, in this category, example of this is when the students can see a formula or principle, he or she can accurately determine the effectiveness and appropriateness of this, or he can be sure enough that the effectiveness of some principle or formula is good enough to solve the problem or process of what he want to answer. So let's proceed to the next situation, which is the students demonstrates ability to assess. So in category of beginner category, the students demonstrates minimal ability to assess the effectiveness of one's choices and is unable to modify them. So in this category, the students the example of this is when the students can he can represent, or he can explain, or he can evaluate the effectiveness of choices of the others. So, but with minimal ability. They just have a minimal ability to assess the effectiveness. So, but in another hand, the student in the beginner category, they can't modify the effectiveness of one's choices. So they can assess the effectiveness, but they can't modify them. So let's proceed to the next category, which is capable category. In capable category, the students can demonstrate some ability to assess the effectiveness of one choice and is likely able to modify them. The example of this is when the students can represent, or he can explain it well, or he can evaluate well some of the he have or she have the ability So the example of this is when the students can represent or explain or evaluate or demonstrates with some ability to assess or to recognize or to know the effectiveness of one's choices, but slightly able to modify them. Unlike the beginner, in the beginner, the students can not modify the effectiveness of one choice, but in capable category, the students is able or slightly able to modify the effectiveness of one choices. So they have some ability to assess. So next category, which is competent category, the students in competent category is able to demonstrate full ability to assess the effectiveness of one's choices and is able to modify them. So unlike the other two category, the performance of the students in competent category is they are able to demonstrate full ability. So example of this is when the students represent or explain the ideas, or they can evaluate with full ability or they can assess, and they can assess with full ability the effectiveness of one choices, and is able and also is able to modify them, unlike the other. So the students in category of competent is able to use the full ability to assess the effectiveness of one choices. So that's all with my report. I hope you understand. So thank you for watching and thank you for listening. God bless. Bye.